Today we'll tell you about the Ducati 750 F1. In 1985, Ducati introduced the 750 F1, a motorcycle destined to make history. It was the road-going version of the 750 model that had debuted the previous year in the Formula TT1 championship. The bike inherited the features of the Pantah engine with its 90-degree L-twin cylinders and desmodromic belt-driven valve train. The frame was also tubular trellis, a configuration that promoted both lightness and strength. Numerous high-performance models tailored for racing evolved from this base version. In the 1980s, the F1 designation was not yet associated with automotive racing, but rather evoked Ducati. This was not due to any ties to Formula 1 racing, but because the Borgo Panigale bike competed in the Formula TT1 World Championship, often simply referred to as F1. Ducati claimed 4 world titles in this arena, positioning the TT competitions as a continuation of the famous 1972 Imola 200-mile race and as a consolation for the discontinuation of the GP 500 project. The establishment of Formula TT, initially hosting races exclusively on the Isle of Man, was seen as a form of consolation granted by the Fédération Internationale de Motocyclisme (FIM) to the British Federation. By that time, the Tourist Trophy, or TT, had become a race largely reserved for British riders. Since 1972, the year Giacomo Agostini won the 500 and 350 races, Phil Red won the 250, and Chas Mortimer won the 125, the TT was abandoned by top riders, even those from English-speaking countries, with the exception of Mortimer. Continuing to include the TT on the World Championship calendar no longer made sense, but the Autocycle Union (ACU), the British Motorcycle Federation, was unwilling to see the cancellation of what is arguably the most famous race in the world. After extensive negotiations, a compromise was reached. The TT would exit the World Championship, but would become part of a new autonomous format that continued to award a world title, actually 3 titles. This new format featured TT1, TT2 and TT3 classes. The Fédération Internationale de Motocyclisme (FIM) thus established Formula TT, with 3 categories reserved for production motorcycles that had to be sold in at least 200 units and retain some essential features like a functional electrical system and self-start. These regulations made Formula TT a haven for 4-stroke motorcycles with displacement limits up to 1000 cc for TT1, 600 cc for TT2 and 400 cc for TT3. Formula TT's fame also spread to Italy thanks to Mike Hailwood and Ducati, who won the F1 at the Isle of Man in 1978. At the age of 38, Hailwood returned to racing and triumphed on a Ducati, giving rise to the legendary 900 MHR, or Mike Hailwood replica. In 1981, Tony Rutter claimed victory in the F2 class on a Ducati derived from the Pantah 600, marking the beginning of a string of triumphs in the category. With 4 consecutive TT2 world titles, Ducati began to set its sights on the TT1 class, especially after the FIM introduced a 750cc displacement limit in 1984. The maximum displacement of 750 cm3 became mandatory for the endurance class, pushing Ducati to develop an enlarged version of the 600 TT2. With victories in the 24 Hours of Montjuic in 1984 and numerous successes in Italy, Ducati had the credentials to debut a 750 road-going model in 1985, the F1. Until 1983, Ducati was a publicly owned company under the control of Finmeccanica. The agreement with Cagiva stipulated that Ducati would cease motorcycle production and focus solely on engine manufacturing for Cagiva. However, Ducati continued to produce its own motorcycles, and 2 years later, Cagiva acquired Ducati. The Ducati 750 F1, produced in 1985, was initially intended for foreign markets, but was later sold in Italy as well. It reflected the aesthetics of the racing version, a tricolor livery, aerodynamic fairing, and a single-seat saddle. The riding position was sporty and compact with low handlebars and high foot pegs. Many considered it too Spartan for a production motorcycle, but many others were captivated by its minimalist design, dedicated solely to the pleasure of riding and performance. This model became the symbol of Ducati's sportiness, even surpassing the 900 MHR. The engine of the F1 was derived from the Pantah 600 SL and 650 SL models, but was redesigned to achieve a displacement of 750 cubic centimeters. Featuring 90-degree L-twin cylinders and a desmodromic valve system, the engine was lightweight and high-performing, characteristics that would remain in Ducati's DNA for decades. The F1 engine, with a bore and stroke of 88 by 61.5 millimeters, has a displacement of 747.72 cubic centimeters and a compression ratio of 9.3 to 1, with a claimed power output of 62.5 horsepower at 7,500 RPM. However, the engine could reach up to 9,000 RPM, delivering a maximum power output of about 70 horsepower. In TT1 racing, it could even achieve 80 horsepower at 10,000 RPM. The F1 features Ducati's desmodromic system, with rocker arms responsible for both the opening and closing of the valves, ensuring precision and reliability. In the 1986 version, the valves were enlarged to further improve performance. The ignition is electronic, supplied by Bosch. The fueling system is vacuum-based, using Del Auto PHF 36 carburetors with an automatic tap, ensuring powerful and precise delivery. The lubrication system includes a radiator with a capacity of 3.4 liters. Frame and suspension. The chromoly steel trellis frame, derived from the TT2 and TT1 versions, is renowned for its strength and stability. It is a semi-bearing engine frame, which contributes to its structural integrity. The fuel tank, initially made from lightweight alloy in 1985 and later from sheet metal, has a capacity of 22 liters. The suspension system originally featured a 40mm Marzocchi fork, adjustable for compression and rebound. This was later replaced by a Forcell Italia fork. The rear suspension included a Marzocchi shock absorber, also adjustable. The swing arm is made of chromoly steel and is mounted on bronze bushings, with the pivot passing through the engine crankcase. The wheels are lightweight alloy spoke rims from Oscom with a 2.50 by 16-inch front and a 3.00 by 18-inch rear. The only change between the two versions was the color, which shifted from yellow-orange in the first to red in the later version. The braking system is supplied by Brembo with two 280mm floating discs at the front and a 260mm rear disc. All three discs are floating in the first version. However, the second version adopted a fixed rear disc, abandoning the floating design. Weighing just 175 kilograms, dry weight, and reaching a top speed of around 200 kilometers per hour, the 750 F1 proved competitive both on the road and on the track. Notable achievements include Virginio Ferrari's victory in the 1985 Italian F1 Championship and Marco Lucchinelli's win at the Battle of the Twins at Daytona. Despite its excellent performance, attractive design, and impressive racing results, the 750 F1 didn't achieve stellar sales figures. Between 1985 and 1986, only 1,801 units were produced. However, its legend is not defined by sales, but by its sporting success. Ducati commemorated its victories with special editions such as Montjuic, Laguna Seca, and Santa Monica. For engine parts and other accessories, visit thekingofficeton.com, where you can find parts for both vintage and modern motorcycles.